Professor, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good. I was just speaking to Joe Kent, and we were just discussing what's happening, the developments today. It's a really interesting conversation because Joe is in a similar position as me, where he's very optimistic that we could see a deal. He does believe that's a more likely scenario. Professor Pape yesterday, among other guests, including the Colonel, was somewhere in the middle, Colonel McGregor. But Professor Pape thinks that a ground operation is inevitable because Trump has not achieved his objectives. So let's begin with what your stance is on the war as a whole. Um, are you optimistic on the developments we're seeing today?
Um, I'm not. I think that when you say the developments we are seeing today, the latest thing I saw is that Trump has declared that what is it? Iran is going to. No, sorry. Iran has declared that it has opened the Strait of Hormuz. Although we don't know. This is being reported in the Guardian. I don't know what the reality is, but Trump's blockade remains in place. I mean, my own surmise is that what Trump needs out of all this desperately is an off ramp, because he's got into a war that he cannot win. He knows that, but at the same time, he got into this war because he desperately needs something he can call a victory, so that he can come across to the American electorate as somebody who has done something big and that they should vote for him, because his numbers have been tanking for a long time. This is why, and this was already clear by the end of last year, so that when this new year began, we were sort of, greeted with this flurry of international aggression initiatives, whether it is, Venezuela, the kidnapping there, and then you got, those threats about Denmark, and then the lecturing to the European Union, and all the flurry of activity around another deal to solve the Ukraine conflict, and now the Iran war. Except that in the case of Iran, he's bitten off way more than he can chew. He went in much deeper than he did anywhere else, partly, of course, enticed by Netanyahu, who gave him to understand that it would all be over in a weekend. All they had to do is threaten, and the good people of Iran would rise up against their oppressors. I put it all this in heavy quotation marks, and everything would be fine. And here we find ourselves nearly 50 days later, with Trump sinking deeper into the, as I've called it elsewhere, the mother of all Middle Eastern quagmires. So there we are.
So, but you think he's in a quagmire right now?
Yes.
Why? Because he seems to be getting out of it.
Well, I think that first of all, with Trump, you never know. You have to wait for proper verification as to what you are saying. I mean, he said he was blockading, except lots of ships were getting through. So what he needs is to give people to understand that he is this great, big, powerful person, and well, as the president of the United States. But in reality, the United States military's ability to do anything very much is not great. And by the way, I forget who you said was saying, Professor Ilan Pape, perhaps. I don't know.
Robert Pape, Professor Robert Pape.
Oh, Robert Pape. I don't know him. But if I personally don't think, obviously, look, I mean, I'm not privy to the thinking of either the Trump White House or the Pentagon. But in my view, I think that any kind of ground operation, other than taking an island or two, but even that would be quite difficult, because I think that the United States and the Trump administration is simply not, they cannot face the fatalities that they would have to accept, and they would have to accept a lot of fatalities, as people know. I mean, for Iran has won if it survives. The Trump administration has to do a lot more before it can say that it has won anything. So far, it has won nothing.
So look, I think a lot of it depends on what happens next in these negotiations. And there's some interesting developments today, other than Trump's words, because Trump's words mean something, but it's really hard to know what they mean. Because, like, for example, when he was talking about the destruction of Iran's civilization, I saw it as him trying to off-ramp. It turned out to be the case. But when he was talking about the negotiations going well before the war, I thought that maybe the war is either going to be delayed or maybe there's a way around it. There's a deal. It turns out to be just a facade because he's already made up his mind to strike. And, I got it wrong. So it's really hard to determine what he means by his words. Actions, on the other hand, it's a better indicator. And on one side, there is a military buildup. Is it for a ground operation? So Professor Pape has been very vocal about this, but he's also been studying wargaming Iran for 20 years. He's advised various governments as well. And for him to tell me that their ground operations are imminent because we're in the escalation trap, called it a quagmire, so he kind of agrees with the quagmire aspect of it, was a shock to me, because I'm very optimistic I've been optimistic for a while. I get a lot of slack for it on where this is heading. Now, when you look at actions, though, today, Professor, Iran just scolded Israel and forced them into a ceasefire. Now, that was Trump. Iran is saying that there's a report, according to Tasnim, that the reason there's a ceasefire is Iran was about to strike Israel. There was an imminent attack last night, and that's what forced Trump. That was planned for last night, and that's what forced Trump to force Israel to accept the ceasefire, to implement a ceasefire. But if you put that there, and you put Trump's words about he'll help, so he said, it is unacceptable. There is no way, or we will not allow Israel to strike Hezbollah. It's very. Let me find you the exact words. He said, they are prohibited, from doing so by the USA in terms of Israel bombing Lebanon. So if you put that, along with the fact he said he'll help Lebanese government with the Hezbollah situation, which really refers to disarming Hezbollah, and the fact Iran has removed their blockade, this action, and Trump talking about a deal within the next 48 hours. If you put all these together as action, could we be seeing a complete pivot, not a toggle, just a complete pivot by Trump in his approach to the region? And what me and Joe were talking about is maybe Trump is so upset about the Israeli influence or Israel's ability to trick him into this war that now he's lashing out by doing the complete opposite of what Israel wants and what he thinks is best for the US. And that might involve heavily improving relations with Iran.
Well, okay. So first of all, let me say that, let me separate a couple of things. Number one, it's not just Trump's words that are not to be trusted. I mean, what he calls his actions. I mean, what is an action? An action is always interpreted in words. When he says he's going to blockade Iran and then dozens of ships are passing through, in what sense is the blockade an action? So you have to understand that Trump, even his actions are performative. They are meant to convey something that and as I said, to me, I really feel that trying to find a method in Trump's madness, as so many people are employed in doing, I mean, it's become practically a not just a cottage industry, it has become a giant industrial sector, the commanding heights of the media economy. So in reality, I think what you have to understand is that this war is rooted, I mean, I do not deny that every American president going back to the past half dozen and more, has wanted to attack Iran, but they haven't dared to do so. But basically what we got was this volatile combination of Trump's desperation to see something that he could call victory, his not very sharp mind about these things, being realistic about this, combined with Netanyahu's ability to beguile Trump into thinking that he could get an easy victory. So that's the first thing I want to say is, how do you interpret Trump's remarks? The second thing is, if Trump's going around saying that I've ordered Israel to do X, Y, or Z, going by his past behavior, I would almost guarantee you that Israel is threatening to do what he does not want them to do. So his compulsion to appear as though he's in the driving seat and not Netanyahu is what's making him say that I've ordered Israel not to bomb Iran. I think that's how I would read Trump. That's Trump all the way, basically. I mean, it is really, I mean, you really, when you think about Trump, you really have to think about just how many things have to go wrong in a relatively prosperous giant economy like the United States for somebody like Trump to get elected, and not just get elected, to get elected twice. This is the depth of the crisis crisis of American economy, society, politics, culture, out of which this war has sprung. It is the internal crisis of the United States which is being visited upon the rest of the world, because the United States has, again, another fatal combination, a fairly expensive military, not necessarily a good military, but a fairly expensive military, combined with a heck of a lot of hubris that goes with it.
Can you expand on that? Why why do you think that all led to the election of Trump? Because Trump was elected as a president that challenges the status quo, that challenges the lawfare we're seeing on the left, that challenges the swamp, the establishment, but also challenges the things that we all, he said he'll work on America's debt. He's not doing that. He's doing the complete opposite. I criticized his actions there.
He's working
So
on it all right.
Yeah, he's not doing well there. He's criticized the forever wars. Obviously, Iran was looking like a possible forever war, but he pulled out. If you compare to Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, even Kosovo, it's a very short war. It's a 40-day war, and one he's pulling out of. And he's now doing a deal with Iran, talking about that they get along very well. He's doing complete U-turn. I want to give him credit, and that's someone I get a lot of slack for criticizing the war and criticizing Trump's decision for getting into the war. But he shifts when reality shifts. The war failed. And I don't want to defend Trump. I'm trying to look at this objectively. The war failed, and he's doing a U-turn. He's not doubling down on the war. He's not calling the Iranian regime horrible. He's not talking about wiping out a whole civilization.
Dirty bastards, crazy bastards. What do you mean? He calls them
a
regime that has been killing Americans for 47 years. He calls them crazy bastards. He calls them all sorts of things.
He said yes. It depends on what's happening, but Professor. True, but it depends what's happening. Yesterday, he said they get along very well.
Listen, he does
That's
that
the
all
beginning
the
of a
time.
shift.
I mean, one day he gets on very well with Zelensky. The next day he is chastising him. One day he gets well with Putin. The next day he says, "Oh, Putin's being very difficult." Same with President Xi. China and remember what happened. Oh my God! Remember the last Trump administration, and he and Kim Jong-un. One day they were calling each other dotard and what was it, Rocket Man, and the next day they were writing love letters to one another. I mean, that's Trump for you. That is what he does.
Professor, I have a question though.
Is that if he smiles at you now, then you'll forget the punch he gave you yesterday?
I have my take on this, and you're not going to like it, Professor, but that's great because I'm enjoying this discussion. My take is that's a strength of his, because he uses rhetoric. He doesn't have ideologies. He's like, whatever is best to achieve my objectives, which is really America first and his legacy first. America and his legacy. He cares too much about his legacy. I think that's a flaw. But at his age, it's a bit hard not to. But it's about his legacy in America. And if it means being nice to Europe, he's going to be nice. But if he's got a problem with someone and he needs to do business with them, if he called them the devil, he'll go back and say, hey, we actually got along very well. And his supporters
he gets along very nicely with the devil, nice trident you've got there, etc.
Yeah, but I'll go with that. He does what's best for the country, and right now what's best for the US is doing business with Iran, and suddenly Iran, he's doing well with them. When he wanted to destroy him, Iran was horrible, evil, horrible civilization. I was one of the few when he put his crazy tweets, his crazy posts about wiping out a civilization and stuff. For me, I was very critical when the war started, extremely. But when those words were coming out, I'm like, guys, let's ease up. That's probably him wanting to walk away. Otherwise, he wouldn't say these things. I just don't take his words that seriously.
Okay, you've just said one sentence that I feel really puts us 180 degrees opposite to one another. Okay, you said that he does what is best for the country. I could not disagree with you more. This guy. So, and that it connects up with what you were asking about. Could I expand on what I mean by the fact that this war is the result of the profound crisis of U.S. society? What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that basically, for the last nearly 50 years, between 45 and 50 years, the U.S. has been administered by governments who have applied neoliberal policies. They claim to be free market and free trade policies, but in reality, they are policies that privilege the interests of a tiny, tiny corporate elite and in opposition to practically everybody else. And that even includes small business people and, etc. Okay. So this is the kind of policy that has been pursued day in and day out for nearly 50 years. Even when it fails to, when it creates recessions, it fails to revive investment, it creates unemployment, it creates regular financial crises. Despite all of this, American governments stick to it. Why? Because the people who help them buy the elections, people who help the politicians buy the elections, are calling the shots, because they are the ones whose interests are served. However, money can't do everything. What happened at a certain point in the middle of the last decade is that it became very clear to some people, Trump included, that you can no longer win elections by telling everybody that things are hunky-dory in America, everything is great, we are the most powerful economy in the world, everybody's doing fine, blah, blah. No. The only way to win elections now was to tell people that everything was going pear-shaped and that Trump was going to come and fix it. He understood that. So he promised people everything he knew they wanted. They wanted jobs. They wanted good manufacturing jobs. They wanted no wars. They wanted low inflation. They wanted low debt. He promised the whole world. He promised the moon. Of course, he had no intention of delivering the moon, because at the end of the day, what is Trump? Trump is a wannabe member of the same corporate capitalist class that presides over the United States. So once he was elected, he has basically done what they wanted. Unfortunately, and so what is happening now, the reason why and remember also, this crisis is so profound that, first of all, the symptom of that is the election of Trump himself as an outsider, because the establishment Republican and Democratic parties couldn't keep a lid on things. So he posed as an outsider, got elected. And anyway, and so the point I'm trying to make is that already was a symptom of crisis. Sorry, one final sentence.
Yeah, of course.
And already by the time of his first election, we were talking about civil war in the United States. Okay, I'll continue afterwards. Yes.
Of course. Yeah, so I've taken a lot of notes. It's going to be so. First, the thing I criticize a lot of Trump's decisions. I think the way he's approaching NATO is not right. I think NATO is an organization. Maybe it doesn't really need to exist anymore because the Russian threat is gone, but it should be repurposed rather than dismantled. I think what Trump is doing to international law, the system that was created after World War II to allow for the world to prosper as it has, it's not perfect, far from perfect, but it's a system that made the world more peaceful than it has ever been, even though it doesn't look that peaceful. So I think it's wrong to really, the US should be the protector of that international system that's been created, should improve it, polish it, but not destroy it, and then give the opportunity for China to pretend to be the protector of that system, the defender of that system.
May I come back on that too, actually? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'd love you. So, and then you made a few points about he promised people everything he thought they wanted. He promised the moon. So I think every politician does that. Then you made a statement. So this is politics, unfortunately. He's hate the game, not the player. Then he said but he ended up being a member of the same corporate class and making the decisions. True and not true. I think some of the decisions, like the Iran war, proved that the establishment still has a lot of influence, even on Trump. But at the same time, I'm sure they didn't want him to do what he's doing in Greenland. They didn't want him to have that fight with Europe. They didn't want him to try to improve relations with Russia and try to end the war in Ukraine. So I think there's also a lot of decisions that he's done that the establishment wouldn't like to be seen. So I feel like Trump is not as perfect as we would have liked to see him. When I say we, I didn't vote for him, and so I'm not even American. But a lot of people that voted for him would have liked to see, and people from the outside that were looking for change wanted to see. He didn't deliver on things that maybe Tucker and others wanted him to achieve on, but he also is making moves in places that we didn't see Biden and others make those moves. Russia being one, and we'll see after this Iran war ended. We don't know what it's going to look like. I think we should not pass judgment, and I've said this for a while. We should not pass judgment on this, what I consider begun as a mistake, until it ends in what happens at the end. That's where I stand on the Iran war.
Okay, so first of all, where are you from if you're not American?
Australia.
Okay. All right.
So we depend on the US. We depend on the American system. If the US fails, we're screwed.
Well, yes and no. I think that as somebody said, I forget who it was, maybe it was Kissinger, somebody like that said, it's it may be a bad thing to be an enemy of the United States. It's even worse to be an ally. As people in Canada, the UK, Australia, and elsewhere are finding out. Maybe not Australia so much, but Australia's turn may yet come. Who knows? Maybe it'll get lucky. But that's not the point. The point, let me get to a couple of really interesting points here. Everybody and their dog thinks that the United States created the post-war world order. No. The United States had to compromise a lot in order to get something like a world order. Why did he have what they would have loved to create is essentially an international structure which would essentially be a world government but under their control. But they couldn't get it. The reason they couldn't get it is because of the existence of the Soviet Union and soon to be China. And the role that Soviet and Chinese communist forces played in defeating Hitler. As a consequence, and a plus, of course, there was a wave of nationalist movements that were also arising and demanding a place on the world stage. So the United Nations had to be created on the basis of sovereign equality. It had to be created on the basis of, non-aggression, respect for sovereignty, blah, blah, etc. All these principles that make the UN a valuable thing. And all those principles exist because of these challenges to the imperial powers of which the United States had just become leader. And even the compromise that had to be made, which is the creation of the permanent 5 members of the Security Council, they had to include both the Soviet Union and China in it. They, of course, kept up the pretense of giving China a seat for a very long time to tiny little Taiwan, but that pretense could not be kept up for a long time. So that's one thing. Secondly, therefore, as a consequence, the United States actually created NATO. NATO is usually opposed to the Warsaw Pact, but the Warsaw Pact was created many years after NATO. NATO was created in order to create a separate forum which would be kind of, influential in the world, in which the imperial powers did not have to consort with the unwashed masses of the world. But the unwashed masses of the world had arrived on the world stage and they were not going to go anywhere. So they created NATO, and the United States has always claimed an exceptionalism that has become ever more obvious as US power has declined and people question its ability to do so. So anyway, the UN system has never been created by the US. The United States has never wanted to be bound by it. The only thing that is obvious now is that the United States' efforts to try and sidetrack it seem more outlandish and are more unsuccessful than ever before. So that's the first point. Secondly, you said every politician promises the moon, and to some extent, I'd hardly disagree with you. We all criticize politicians, but there is something systemically different about Trump, because if every politician does that, then somehow they could get away with it, then the establishment politicians would not have been successfully challenged by this outsider who did manage to win in 2016 and again in when did he win first? That's right. He won in 2016 and then again in 2024. Yeah. And that difference was that he said that this economy stinks. Everything has gone very wrong. And remember, the Biden administration were constantly trying to say everything is fine. Why don't Americans understand how well our economy is doing? I mean, this rhetoric, this was actually frequently reported in the last election campaign. So that's the second point. So there is something qualitatively different about Trump. The MAGA thing, every establishment politician was constantly reveling in how well the American economy is doing and how powerful the United States is. And Trump ran on Make America Great Again, which means it is no longer great. It has to be made great again. And then finally, the establishment in Trump. Now, there's
Obama was all about change. Obama was all about change as well.
Remember,
change when it's about change.
Sure,
and hope.
And you're right. He was about change, but he was not a anti-establishment politician. He came from within the establishment. He had to say change because remember that election campaign took place in the shadow of the 2008 financial crisis. Indeed, I would have said if it hadn't been for the 2008 financial crisis, he likely would not have been elected. Why do I say that? Because there is evidence to show that a whole lot of people who just the previous summer before the crisis had hit were saying, oh, I'd never vote for him. He's a black guy. These white working class people who were quite happy to be quite racist in front of everybody, to the media and so on, finally figured out that if there was somebody who would do something about them, or
But I'm saying
finally
there's always a
believed that if it
scenario
was
where,
somebody who would do something,
but there's
it was him. But of course, Obama never did anything. Sorry, please
But
go
there's
ahead.
always, sorry, and I was going to say, there's many examples, I think you're in India and neighboring Pakistan, which I've covered very closely. Imran Khan came in with a very similar concept. The Pakistani people were living in poverty. The country's not doing well. He's an outsider. That was his approach to politics. You've got some same thing happening. A lot of countries are like, make XYZ great again. It's become MEGA, I don't know if it happens in India, but I know make MEGA was, I can't remember which country had Italy, I think, make Italy great again, make Romania great again. So it became the whole concept of make X great again. So the strategy worked. I still think it's a political strategy. I know it's digressing away from Iran. It's just a political strategy.
I have no doubt that every politician does make many promises that they have no intention of keeping. What I'm saying is that, okay, maybe in fact, let me go back to this. So Trump said that he was going to, make America great again, etc. And it was a much more radical break in the case of the United States because, the idea was that the United States is not India, it's not Romania, it's not Bangladesh or Pakistan or what have you. It's the United States. They always believe that they are the greatest country on earth, etc. So what could possibly be wrong? And the hold of the two parties on the political system is far firmer than anything in Pakistan. Has had military flip-flop between military and civilian governments all the time. So I don't think that those are good comparisons. So, and let me also say that, you see, the fact is that the crisis that I'm speaking about comes particularly for the Trump presidency, comes from the fact that what he's promised requires him to go this way. What Trump needs to do for the ruling class requires him to go this way. So there is this big gap opening up.
Yeah.
And most politicians try to keep, they're always riding two horses, the what we may call the accumulation, or, what they have to do for the ruling class, and the legitimation, or the minimum they have to do for the ordinary people to get elected. So they try to keep those two horses together and somehow ride those two horses. In Trump's case, they're going so far apart that Trump has basically jumped onto the accumulation one, that is to say, the one that is about serving elite interests. He's forgotten about ordinary people, and so he's losing his MAGA base. He's losing support. The Republican Party.
He's losing his MAGA base. He's losing his MAGA base mainly because of Israel. It's make Israel again, make Israel great. Israel first versus America first. I think this is the main narrative.
Affordability crisis, the housing crisis. I mean,
but that's been happening. That's been happening for many years. I think, but we know, Professor, no president could shift that very quickly. Like, it's impossible.
Yes. No.
I made the joke before. Every president is cleaning up the mess of two administrations before him. The kind of joke is like, so Trump's mess right now is going to be a mess for the next administration, the one after. Every president.
Look, these people. I mean, in that sense, you see, okay. Let me just, because you haven't let me finish several of my points, so now I'm going to have to return to some of them. But okay, so as I said, Trump promised these people, I mean, by the time Trump got elected, the distance between what the people needed and the elite needed was already great. He promised the people everything to get elected, but then in office, he has done what the elite wanted. As far as the establishment is concerned, you know what happened? On the one hand, initially, Trump got elected on the strength of the support, the financial support of the more maverick capitalists of the United States. But between the time he got elected and the time he had his inauguration, practically all the other more establishment capitalist class, the corporate capitalist class, were all present in their numbers, present, sir, registering their presence as if at school. And so on. So the point is that they all have lined up behind Trump because they are not sure that certainly they weren't then, and perhaps they are still not sure that they can they can rely on the Democrats anymore. So they have lined up with Trump. Now, however, even Trump is losing support. Meanwhile, the Democrats, if there's any spark left in them, they are going further left. So I think the American capitalist classes will be in a quandary as to what to do at this point. Who will be the political agent that will win the elections and do their bidding the next time? I think this is an open question. So this is because we were discussing the establishment and the Trump administration and Trump himself. So that is his relationship with the establishment. He's always wanted to be part of the establishment. Getting elected president has been his way in. That was already clear. I wrote this in a column I wrote soon after his first inauguration.
Professor, let's just look at, again, Ukraine war, he's trying to end it. If you want to look at the establishment is a very broad term, but the military-industrial complex would love that war. It's printing money more than the Iran war, any other war, in the Ukraine war. Well, the Iran war was actually very lucrative. The Iran war, the establishment, again, if you look at the pro-Israeli lobby, for example, military-industrial complex, they did not want the war to end in 40 days. They would like to see the war go on for 6 months and troops on the ground. That's what they would like, because that's where they would make a lot of money. He ended the war in 40 days. The pro-Israeli establishment, I know that's not the only establishment, but that's part of it, a big part of it. The pro-Israeli lobby and donors would not like to see a strong Iran. Well, Trump is doing business with Iran, potentially. He's talking about getting a percentage of the toll booth, which shows openness to do business with Iran. He's called the Strait of Hormuz the Strait of Iran, did not delete it. He kept the post there. I don't know if you can edit posts in Truth Social. I don't think you can, but he kept the post there, calling it Strait of Iran. He's forced Israel into a ceasefire, and he's already moving away from Iran. He's kind of said, look, I did a mistake there. I'm going to walk away. And he's now walking away from NATO as well.
I'd like you to show me where he says that.
No, he doesn't say that. He would never, Trump would never admit to a mistake. That is definitely not a characteristic of his. I wish he does. I think it takes a lot of humility.
Let me say, but for the good of the world, he should admit that. If he were really trying to do what you said is what's good for the United States, because I tell you what, another thing.
Admitting is words. There's words versus actions, Professor.
One more sentence. You said that he has ended the war in 40 days. I don't think the war has ended. We are just living through a relatively quiet phase for it. The war against Iran has not ended. There could easily be, you yourself were talking about ground operations being initiated now.
Of course. So look, if the war doesn't end, I'd probably be on your side of the argument and arguing against Trump even more than you are, because I would find that appalling. So I'm just looking at the actions that are happening right now, because there's others like yourself and the professor I mentioned earlier, Professor Pape, and others as well that believe there's a likelihood that it won't end. But I usually look at the indicators I look at, usually the markets. For me, the markets are probably the best indicator. That's the smart money. That's the people that have Trump's ear. That's people that have people inside the government that could talk to. So the markets are telling us the war has ended. The market, so that's the one I'm going to use as an indicator. Oil is down below $85 a barrel, which is insane. I want to just double check that price, because that's a crazy low price, which indicates, because even if the war ended, oil shouldn't be that low, because the infrastructure, the system, the logistics, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, by the way. It takes a long time to restart everything. So the damage is done. But for the price of oil to be where it is today, it shows that the war has ended and they don't expect anything similar to start up again. And maybe even a deal that allows Iran to export their oil on the open market, which means that would reduce the supply constraints that there are. So if you look at those indicators, the war has ended. And if the war has ended, Professor, in terms of him admitting the war has ended, I don't really care. I really agree that Trump, when he makes a silly post about the Pope, or he talks about destroying civilization, I think that the civilization one is inappropriate for a president. The Pope, for me, these are irrelevant. I know a lot of people smarter than me disagree with me. Tucker was really upset by those, still is, Tucker Carlson. But for me, I care about actions. If he walks away from Iran, does a deal, and puts American interests above Israel's, I applaud him. I don't really care what he says, because Trump is Trump. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think, okay, so number one, if you're waiting for him to end this war, I think you'll be waiting for a long time. Remember what he said about Ukraine? He was going to end it the day he was elected. Well, we are waiting now, more than a year later. Okay, year and a half later, nearly. Okay, number two, markets, smart money. First of all, I would say that even if I did trust some notion of markets and what they do, I wouldn't trust this market. This market is hugely a bubble market. It's multiple bubbles all at the same time, created by the easy monetary policy. And by the way, despite the increases in interest rates, real interest rates are still, given the inflation, still quite low. driven by easy monetary policy, which means that there is so much darn money sloshing around the system. It has to go somewhere. None of this money is smart. It is dumb and desperate and trying to find a bit of return here and a bit of return there. And you know what? The other thing is that Trump was earlier thoroughly enjoying himself, like a kid who's discovered that there's this machine and he can push this button and something spectacular happens, and pushes another button and something else spectacular happens. And he thought he was playing the market. But in the end, he realized that he had to make bigger and bigger threats and give bigger and bigger reassurances in order to have any effect on the market. If the markets have essentially crashed, because it's just because they are easily spooked and easily beguiled. These markets are definitely not to be trusted. The money's got to go somewhere. It's going to go. That's not the issue. That's not what I would trust. Oil prices, I agree with you. I think that in the long run, and partly because Trump has not stopped this war, but partly because so much damage has already been done, that oil prices will go higher and will probably remain higher for a long time, simply unless the world suddenly manages to create a fast-paced.
No, but the oil price, it's at $84, Professor. But the facts are different on the ground. Oil is down below $85.
Yeah, like it went down today or yesterday or something. I mean, it's a temporary movement. Let them see the next turn in the war.
We just look at. But I'm just saying that those people that are betting billions of dollars on the price of oil, they're the ones that are closest to Trump and the Trump administration. We've seen how oil price reacts before news comes out. Kind of gives you an idea that that's a different problem that should be investigated, but it gives you an idea that the smartest people are the ones that bet billions on the markets. When I'm talking about markets, I'm talking about commodities, oil price. So that is, for me, the best indicator.
I wouldn't say that they are the smartest people, because they do eventually, end up in financial crisis and losing lots of money. So, and let me also say something else. It's quite possible that a lot of the money that is driving oil prices up or down are people who have insider information from the Trump administration. Yeah. This probably would be par for the corrupt ruling classes of the United States. Biden's time also, we heard such stories. That's not the point. Let me tell you one other thing. Trump is not in control of when this war will end. Iran is more in control of it as to when it will end. Yeah. So that
I think Iran seems to be giving him an off ramp, though, by the looks of it. They opened the Strait of Hormuz. They literally gave up the biggest leverage for now. Yeah, of course, I could be completely wrong.
Let us see what happens. And who also knows what is the story behind it? Why Iran may have done this or that or the other.
So I'm actually really delighted that we're speaking today, because I made a post earlier today, and I want you to expand on it, because you probably could expand on it better than I. Let me see if I find it. There it is. The country to watch out for is not China. It is India. Not in a bad way. Watch out for as in the next superpower. Modi is playing geopolitical chess better than anyone. And then I quote tweeted the tweet saying, Jai Hindi, the world is watching. Fascinating how Modi is playing politics. The decisions he's making, getting sanctions off Russian oil. Tell me more. Tell the world more, because everyone's like, what is China doing? What is China going to say? What is China going to do? I've been talking about India in my business world, not on my show, for many, many years, and watching India. I've been to India. I know a lot of people from India. I've got a lot of friends there. Tell me more about India, what their play with all this. What is the strategy? What is the India strategy right now, especially when they're between China and the US? They're in a very interesting position, and even Russia.
Well, okay, before I do that, tell me, what is this business that brings you dealing with India and other such countries?
Oh, so I do have a few companies. The one that I go to India, and one of my business partners, I went to his wedding in India, is IBC. So it's more AI and crypto technologies. It's technology.
Okay. And so you visit India a lot. Okay. So first of all, you couldn't have asked
twice, not a lot, twice only, but that was back before my political days.
I see. Okay. Well, you couldn't have asked this question about Modi to anyone who opposed him more deeply, and who has very little respect for this guy. You think that he's playing this crisis? He has subjected India to worse punishments, because India right now is going through a huge fuel shortage, rises in prices of petrol and so on. So India is not in a good shape. Modi is nowhere to be seen. Every time there is a crisis, Modi goes AWOL. India has lined itself up with the United States in general. It's not just Trump, but with the United States in general, and Israel for that matter. And this is despite the fact that India has historic relations, good relations with Iran, and now India finds itself on the other side. And I really don't think there's anything to praise in what Modi is doing. Modi is not doing anything other than under the guise of talk of multi-alignment and all this kind of claptrap.
But I'll ask you a question
He's aligning in India with the United States and Israel. Sorry, go ahead.
He's doing not only that, he's close with Putin. I understand he sanctioned Russia when the US pressured him, but the US is still the world's biggest economy and military on a GDP per capita basis, and the US is China's a close second. He went and saw Xi Jinping, and Americans were really angry, like, oh, you're doing, you're being friendly to Trump, and then you go see Xi, and then he's now doing business again. As soon as the crisis happened, he's able to buy Russian oil, and he was able to buy Russian oil throughout the entire Biden administration. Biden is like, we need you to buy Russian oil so we can keep the price of oil low. So when I look at these things together, I'm not an expert on Indian politics or Modi as much as you are, but for me, looking at it on the outside and look at where India's position, it has a lot more potential that's untapped, sure. And there's a lot of issues within the country, within the system itself has been for decades. It has a way to go to become the next China, but it can be there. But my question is, from a political perspective, hasn't Modi really aligned himself with all three countries, with all the three other poles?
No. You can't do that. You can't, hunt with the foxes and run with the hares and hunt with the foxes. If you think that's what anybody can do, you've got another thing coming. I think that that's the first thing. Secondly, yes, India benefited from Russian oil, but India also agreed to reduce the purchase of Russian oil under pressure from the Trump administration, at the end of which India got the worst tariffs ever. Where is Modi's closeness to Trump or the US, or where did that get us in at all? And I think that the Modi government, like the Trump administration, has a one-point economic policy: do what the richest interests in the country want, and in the case of India, this amounts to a handful of companies, and that's what Modi is doing. The entire economy, ordinary people, small business people, even medium and sort of intermediate level business people are suffering. Indians are groaning under debt. The economy is not creating jobs. There are riots among young people. Every time there is a state exam, for entry into the civil service or the police service or something, there are riots because there are so many applicants, so many people who wish to get these very, very small number of positions. The Indian economy, India is supposed to be trying to reap a demographic dividend. Well, India is not going to reap any demographic dividend if things continue as they have gone on under Modi for the last 10, 11 years. We are sitting on a demographic time bomb. Young people will eventually come to the point where they will get tired of being strung along and being frustrated all the time. So Modi is definitely the wrong thing. India does not need Modi. India needs to get Modi out. I wish there were the political forces who could turf him out, but as yet, I can't say that the reports are very good.
And then if we put that in going back to Iran and what's happening there and the kind of geopolitical shifts that we're seeing, if Trump does start doing business with Iran, if he does a deal where he lifts the sanctions, and he does trade with the country, and a ceasefire in Lebanon holds, would you give him his flowers?
If that happens, I mean, I'd still have to see the circumstances in which that happens, but and I'm not sure I would give him flowers. I mean, I would probably conclude that he had to do this because Iran defeated him.
Well, he can. If Iran defeated him, there's two options: continue the war until you defeat Iran, and the US has done that multiple times. That becomes a quagmire, another forever war, or accept defeat and accept the consequences. If Iran did
I
defeat,
think
now obviously defeat is not.
The only reason why Trump is not continuing the war is because he didn't want to even start it. What he wanted was, without actually having a war, he wanted to wave something in the front of the American electorate that looked like victory. And he realizes 40, 50 days in that he's definitely not getting that. So he's trying to find a decent substitute that might work, a decent workaround that will work. And even that is not available. So I don't know what he's going to do, but I definitely don't think that Trump, I mean, listen, somebody who can talk about things like shithole countries and such like things, he has absolutely no conception of peace. He's not a peace president. All he wanted was the peace prize. I mean, he is an idiotic man. I mean, I don't see why you are attributing any kind of humanity or rationality to him.
I just don't like Professor. I don't like to look at Professor.
I mean, you think that he has any humanity?
I just think. I just don't like to look at things in such a binary way. So people always get triggered when I say something and I say something else afterwards. I'm like, guys, nothing's black and white. If I criticize Trump on one thing, doesn't mean I'm anti-Trump. If I criticize Trump for the Iran war, doesn't mean I want to applaud him for the ceasefire. If I criticize Iran for what they did in January, doesn't mean I won't criticize this war and be against this war. So it's like I just don't like the buckets of being pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Iran, anti-Iran. I look at things in a more nuanced way. And when it comes to Trump, I just don't look up. I wouldn't put him in a bucket of evil, etc. And I told Joe Kent, I'm like, even the term, when you put the term terrorist on an organization, that's a lazy oversimplification that's been politicized at the behest of the US government and even at the behest of Israel. That is just not the right way of approaching things. So it's like everything's a lot more complex. Everything's a lot more nuanced. And I also change my mind when facts change. And when it comes to Trump, if he does the right thing now when it comes to Iran, I'd say, look, he made a mistake with the war. Maybe even the war wasn't a mistake if there's an incredible outcome.
That would be taking one set of actions, say only on Iran, out of context. I mean, you have to put Trump in a much larger context look, listen, I mean, I'm sure you and millions of others who voted for Trump think that, he might do something good for the United States. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say I have absolutely no reason to believe what you seem to believe. That's all.
Well, if you look at,
I'm not nuanced. I'm as nuanced as the next person. I just don't.
No, I'm not saying. I didn't mean that way. So I apologize. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. I just don't see anything.
But I've just said. But if he does the right thing with Iran, you said to me, if the circumstances of him, we're seeing a bit of a shift already, indicators of that shift, of him saying ceasefire. He was very harsh language against Israel. Then he told he's hinting at doing business with Iran. Talked positively about the Iranian regime. So if we're seeing a complete U-turn, for me, I made a post a few days ago. I'm like, guys, Trump made a mistake in this war, but he could do X, Y, Z that might turn this mistake into something positive. And again, I've seen very supportive of Trump right now because obviously you're very critical. If you look at my posts, MAGA fans criticized the hell out of me because I was critical of the war. I got a lot of slack for it. I was very critical of the war. But I said, if Trump does a U-turn and does X, Y, Z, because we don't know what's in his mind. Everyone's speculating. Did he attack because of Israel? Did he attack because he thought it's going to lead to regime change? Did he listen to this? Did he get faulty intelligence? We can speculate. We don't really know. Even people close to him, by the way, when I speak to them, they don't really have a direct, exact answer of what led him over the edge. But we can look at his actions. And I'm saying if the actions show the contrary of what we saw 41 days ago when he started the war, or 60 days ago when he started the military buildup, then I think it's one. I'm not talking about you, Professor. I'm just in general, because a lot of comments kind of echo what you're saying, by the way. One should change their perspective on things. That's just my position on Trump.
Well, all I'm saying is that my perspective on Trump is not limited to what happens in the war on Iran. It includes what he did in Venezuela, what he's done in the ICE raids, what he's done in his various bills, his big, beautiful bills here and there and everywhere. I mean, he is essentially the way in which he's profiting in an exceedingly corrupt fashion. And even... I mean, it just includes too many things. So I just don't see this Iran thing in isolation. Yes, I hope that, he does things that minimizes killing from here on. But I know that the only reason why he will do it is because he has no other choice. And by the way, you said something earlier. You said, what, you don't know what's in Trump's mind. You know what? I think I know what's in Trump's mind. There's a giant image of himself at which he worships. That's all there is in his mind. Yes.
As a final question, Professor, where do you see this war by, what are we now, April, by mid this year, by June, May, June?
Well, I think that it'll be up to Iran to decide. And I think that if when they will, obviously the Iranians do not want to keep being bombed, but at the same time, unless you see, remember, they came out with a 10-point plan, and that 10-point plan includes a lot of things. It includes, by the way, it includes compensation, it includes control over Strait of Hormuz, it includes the United States exiting from the region. It includes guarantees that Iran will never be attacked. So I personally think that, unless Trump really essentially, chickens out properly, like, not continuing to threaten anything, which is the best end to this war. Allow Iran to win. Say you failed to do whatever it is, or you never meant to go in war in the first place. Tell the truth. Whatever you want to do, but stop fighting. Get out. Unless that happens, I think this war will continue. I'm sorry to say.
I really hope it doesn't.
I hope it doesn't too. And as I say,
it's a rough war.
What it will take. I think that Trump has to admit that he made a mistake and get the hell out of there. And if he does that, great. Again, that if he'll only do that if he thinks that somehow that is going to improve his chances in November. But there is no other reason why he's going to do that.
Professor, it's a pleasure to speak to you for the first time. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I enjoyed it too. However much I may disagree with you, it's at least we got some. I got to say
we agreed.
Things.
If we spoke 2 weeks ago, we'll probably be agreeing on 80% of the things, because you should have seen how vocal I was against the war. It was such an upsetting war to me. It was such an unnecessary war. Depends on what happens now, but I found it to be a very, very unnecessary and sad war. But I'm glad it's over.
Me too. I mean, it's not over, but I'll be glad when it's over.
Hopefully it is. And also the Lebanon ceasefire is only a 10-day ceasefire, so we have to make sure that it's a permanent ceasefire, because the Lebanon issue hopefully gets resolved as well. That country needs it. Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.